and welcome to the 4.07 quiz recording for U.S. History Part B. In this recording, I'm going to be reading you the questions and answer options to help you with your quiz. Also, just a couple of reminders before you start. Make sure that you save answers as you go, and at the end, before you finish and log out, submit for grading. That's very important to make sure that it is sent to me successfully in the grade book. For this quiz, you have a total of 19 questions. This is a lengthier quiz, and each of those questions are worth 1 point each. Let's get started with your quiz. You may pause the recording as you go through if you need to slow down or rewind to hear me read them again. After World War II, the United States experienced an economic boom, which did not contribute to that boom. The GI Bill, a readiness to spend and consume, the Taft-Hartley Act, or a surge in international trade. Number two, although overall per capita income rose after World War II, poverty still existed in certain areas of the country. Where was it the greatest? On the West Coast, in rural areas, along the Canadian border, or in large cities? If you're not sure what per capita income means, that's a cue that you need to be looking up that term. How did African Americans fare during the economic boom in the 1950s? They lost purchasing power. They maintained but did not gain income. They gained income, but the gap widened between whites and blacks. They gained income so that the gap decreased between whites and blacks. Number four, what was one effect of the GI Bill on American society in the post-war era? The military remained at full force. More people were able to attend college. Deserving soldiers received commendations, or veterans received benefits that allowed them to purchase TVs. Number five, why was there a baby boom during the post-war era? With additional government programs in place, people were counting on assistance. The government encouraged people to have large families. With the war over and the economy growing, people were more prepared to raise children. Or the last option, people wanted the additional tax exemptions offered for having children. Number six, what is one way that housing changed in the post-war period? Apartments were built as rapidly as possible in order to compete for the best tenants. People began saving so that they could pay cash for their houses. People began moving out of the cities and into rural areas, or suburban developments began to spring up when builders applied assembly line techniques to homes. Number seven, what pattern of segregation emerged during the post-war era? Whites remained in the cities, forcing blacks to find housing elsewhere. Blacks left the cities in order to buy farms and live more peacefully. Whites moved to the suburbs, leaving blacks and other minorities in the cities, or blacks and whites both moved to the suburbs where only a few communities were integrated. Number eight, how did automobile ownership change after World War II? It became more difficult to own a car because production changes brought increased costs. By the 1950s, most families owned 2 cars. Millions more cars were produced and high percentage of Americans owned them. Car ownership declined for a while because manufacturers failed to produce new models. Number nine, what was not a significant technological development of the post-war era? Computers, television, transistors, or the radio? Number 10, how did television influence American life beginning in the 1950s? Commercials created a desire for products that people did not really need. TV helped people see that their lives were very much like those of people in other parts of the country. Travel shows heightened interest in seeing all the country and other parts of the world. Or TV created a common culture and developed common social norms. Number 11, one of the societal pressures of the 1950s was conformity. In what way were women expected to conform? Women were expected to build careers. Women were expected to complete college before marriage. women were expected to marry and have children, or women were expected to hold jobs and raise children. Number 12, what is one reason for a general pressure to conform in American society during the 1950s? Conformity was encouraged in order to create a more robust marketplace. In a post-war period, most people just wanted to live quiet lives. The defeat of communism required a unified society, or in an era of Cold War tensions, controversy was discouraged. Number 13, how did art change during the 1950s and 1960s? A landscape revival recalled an era of peaceful times. Abstract Expressionism spoke to the needs of the age. American artists attempted to capture the realism of Picasso. Or the last one, art reflected the political quiet of the Eisenhower administration. Number 14, which J.D. Salinger character rejected conformity in a novel that created a great deal of controversy? Was it Holden Caulfield, Willie Loman, Rabbit Angstrom, or Franny Glass? Which phrase most often characterizes the teen culture of the 1950s? The silent generation, rebels without a cause, hippies, or baby boomers? What type of music did Elvis Presley perform when he appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show in the 1950s? Country western, rock and roll, jazz, or bebop? Number 17, which was not a factor that helped determine the outcome of the election of 1960? The televised debates, John Kennedy's charm, Richard Nixon's tolerance of communism, or Kennedy's heroism in World War II? Number 18, what stood in the way of President Kennedy sending a man to the moon, increasing federal spending for education, and increasing aid to relieve poverty? A potential federal budget deficit, Republican opposition to social programs, unpopular tax increases, or a foreign crisis that required attention? And your last question, number 19. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. Why was this excerpt from Kennedy's inaugural address so memorable? It continued the thrust of an Eisenhower administration. It reminded people of what World War II meant. It inspired people to recall their sense of patriotism and participation. It let the world know that America was there to help. Again, at the end of your quiz, make sure that you submit for grading, but save your answers first. Good luck on your quiz.